can you confirm that we're ready to go, please?
Robbie says it's good to go in the chat. Okay? So welcome to the Judiciary Committee hearing this afternoon to consider 8 judicial nominations. Governor's message number 1 for Karen Nakasone for a term of 10 years on the Intermediate Court of Appeals. Judiciary Communication number 1, Karen Holma for a 6-year term on the District Court of the First Circuit for the non-practicing and for the non-attorneys, that's Oahu. JC number 2, Tracy Fukui for a 6-year term on the District Court of the First Circuit. JC 3, Bryant Zane for a 6-year term on the District Court of the First Circuit. JC 4, Andrew Park for a 6-year term on the District Court of the First Circuit. JC 5, Courtney Nasso for a 6-year term on the District Family Court of the First Circuit. JC 6, Elizabeth Pike Harris for a 6-year term on the District Family Court of the First Circuit. And finally, JC 7, Thomas Haya for a 6-year term on the District Family Court of the First Circuit. This meeting, including the audio and video of remote participants, is being streamed live on Facebook and YouTube. You will find links to the live stream options on the broadcast page of the legislator's website. That's www.capitol.hawaii.gov/broadcast.aspx. I'll repeat that, capital.hawaii.gov/broadcasts, plural.aspx. In the unlikely event that we have to abruptly end this hearing due to a major technical difficulty, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business tomorrow, Friday, October 2 at 1 p.m. on Zoom and in room 1016 as we're doing now, and a public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. Please stay with us for 20 minutes. If we have a crash, if we can't fix the problem in 20 minutes, we will roll it over till tomorrow. If we only have a partial crash, for example, if my laptop goes down, Vice Chair Keo'okalole will take over and continue the hearing to its conclusion if necessary. If the crash only affects a nominee, we will do everything we can today to take testimony. We'll do everything we can today. We'll take the testimony, we'll ask testifiers questions, and then we'll roll that GM or that JC to the end of the agenda to see if the technical problems can be worked out. If a nominee cuts out and the problem is fixed before the end of the agenda, I intend to go back to that nominee to finish up and ask the current nominee that we'd be considering at that point to wait until we finish with the first ones or the earlier ones. So for the people participating remotely, all testifier audio will be muted and video disabled until it is your turn to testify. There is a 2-minute limit per testifier. If there are temporary technical glitches during your turn to testify, we will roll you to the end of the agenda as the end of that particular nominee, and we'll try to fit you in, but if we may have to move on to the next one if it takes too long, to the next nominee if it takes too long to sort out the technical problems. And we have received everyone's written testimony and read it. The committee will not be voting today. The committee will vote on Monday, October 5 at 10:30 a.m. on Zoom and in room 016. Regardless of the vote in committee, each nominee will get a full Senate vote, which will occur on Tuesday, October 6. And right now, I believe it's scheduled for 11:30 a.m. That could change, but that's the plan for the moment. Okay. Let's go to the nominees. Judge Nakasone, Karen Nakasone, for a 10-year term on the Intermediate Court of Appeals is up first. For the testifiers, the first testifier is Charles W. Crumpton, and I believe he is here online. And go ahead, Mr. Crumpton.
Thanks very much, Senators Rose, Keo'okalole, and Gabbard. Stand by my letter. The only thing I'd add to that is from my 42 years of civil litigation here as a Richardson Law grad, Judge Nakasone is truly a model judge. We're lucky to have her, and she will do great credit to the judiciary, the ICA, and Hawaii.
Okay, thank you very much. You're welcome to stay online if you like, but you're not required to. Oh, if you could stay until we come around to, why don't we do it this way? Members, are there any questions for Mr. Crumpton? Let's go ahead and take them out of order just because of the way we're doing this. Anyone? Okay, if not, thank you very much, Mr. Crumpton. Thanks for testifying, going to the trouble of testifying remotely. If you'd like to stay around, members may have questions later, but giving everybody a chance to ask. So let's go ahead and move on to the next person on the list, which is Trish Morgan in support, and it'll be a while before we have another remote testifier, so I will read the names, and they're all in support for Judge Nakasone, so I'll read the names and we'll go from there. So that was Trish Morgan in support, Adrian Dakwa in support, Alan T. Keto in support, Alan Williams in support, Allison Saka in support, Alfonso Bragg with the NAACP in support, Amy Agbayani, Hawaii Friends of Civil Rights in support, Anna Ishikawa Jackson in support, Benjamin Rose in support, Bruce Nakamura in support, Catherine Lowenberg in support, Christopher T. Gooden in support, Connie Arakaki Chun in support, Connie Chang in support, Crystal Glendon in support, Cyrus Tamashiro in support, Daniel Gluck in support, David Louie in support, Dick Tashima in support, Edward Aquino in support, Elizabeth Jubin Fujiwara in support, Elizabeth Kent in support, Jeff Sogi, Japanese American Citizens League Honolulu chapter in support, Y Women's Lawyers in support, J.C. McCullinich, Jackie Esser in support, Jamie Miyasato in support, Jamie Yamagata in support, Jeffrey Hu in support, Joni Orimoto in support, Josephine Chang in support, Joyce Matsumori Oshijo in support, Judith Ann Pavey in support, Leighton Lee in support, Leanne Ebisugawa in support, Lynn Miyahira in support, Marie Milks, the Honorable Marie Milks retired in support, Mark Murakami in support, Mike Sayama in support, Akechukwu Oki Amadi in support, Philip Ruzzotti in support, Phyllis Hironaka in support, Rhonda Nishimura in support, Richard Wilson in support, Simeon Akoba in support. Sorry, I'm hearing myself back through the retired Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. Stephen Levinson, also retired Associate Justice of the Supreme Court in support. Sorry, getting feedback. I'm trying to figure out how to resolve that.
Chair Rhodes.
Tanya Kakina Cabanero in support.
Chair Rhodes.
Yes.
This is the Senate President. I was trying to get here before the start. I wanted to thank you and your committee, in particular Senator Keoho Kalole, who has been pushing for us to get to the live broadcast of the meeting and the interaction, and our first meeting to be done in this way. Judge Nakasone, thank you for being the first participant in this momentous occasion for the Senate, and I just wanted to come down and thank the committee and especially the clerk and our IT team for putting everything together. We thought we might be in this position when the date was identified for the confirmation, so I appreciate the efforts made by all of those involved to get us here, and I will let you resume to your task, Chair Rhodes, and the committee. Best wishes, Judge Nakasone.
Thank you very much. Thanks for dropping by on this. Everybody, we're the guinea pigs, so we can't blow it. All right, I need to mess with my, hang on just a second here. I'm hearing myself in feedback, which is not a good situation. Okay, next is Tanya Kakina Cabanero in support. Taryn Tomasa in support. Thomas Tsuchiyama in support, Timothy Ho in support, Tracy Wiltgen in support, Tracy Murakami in support, Walter Rodby in support, Wayne Tashima in support, William Chin in support, William Kaneko in support, Colbert Matsumoto in support, Colin Fritz in support, David Van Acker in support, Derek Kobayashi in support, James Tabe in support, Leighton Oshima in support, Seth R. Harris in support, Susan Arnett in support, Trisha Nakamura in support, and the final testifier we have on the list is Gregory Fry with the Hawaii State Bar Association, and I believe he is here to testify remotely. Is that correct? Are you here, Mr. Fry?
I am here, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and all members of the committee. I'm here just for a few minutes to supplement what I believe, and I know you know, is a very detailed written report of our process. Because I was involved in my position as the current president of our state bar, from start to finish, I dealt with Judge Nakasone, and I just want to supplement a couple of things that might not have come out in the written report. Number one, we were extremely impressed with her balance, her significant exposure as an attorney to both the civil side and the criminal side of the law. She continued that for years on the bench as a circuit court judge and continues to this day. We find that to be essential for the position she has been nominated for, to sit in judgment at one of the highest courts of our state, which will regularly deal with both criminal and civil matters. The last thing I would say in support is, when I heard Chair Rhodes read the significant list of those in support, I can tell you with confidence that a majority of those names are literally, and I say that as a third generation attorney, literally the legends of our bar that are in support of this nominee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fry. That is all the testimony that we have on GM number one. Before we go forward, I did want to mention that all of the entire complement of the Judiciary Committee is either in 016. Greetings, Senator Favela and Senator Kim. And I'm sorry, you're online. Senator Kim is online, and Senator Gabbard and Keoa Kalole are also on Zoom.
I apologize. I may have to switch over the computer, but I'm having some problems. But I'm here.
Okay, so we are at the point where, oh, I'm sorry. Does any of the members wish to ask any questions of Mr. Fry before he takes off? Questions for that testifier? I do have one quick question for you, Mr. Fry. So just so everybody knows, obviously you had only good things to say about Judge Nakasone, but the bar does a qualified or disqualified. My understanding is you deemed her to be qualified for the job that she's seeking.
I probably went a little too quick, and thank you for me to be a little more artful. As in the written testimony, we deemed her qualified, and you are correct. We have only those two designations.
Okay. All right, thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, if not, Judge Nakasone, if you'd like to make an opening statement. Can't hear you at this point.
How about now?
That's much better. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Keoho Kalole, and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. 25 years ago, my first legal job was at the Intermediate Court of Appeals. when I was chosen as a law clerk for Judge Simeon Okoba. I never would have thought that 25 years later I might be able to return to that court, this time as a judge. I want to serve on the Intermediate Court of Appeals, or the ICA, because I'm committed to public service. I feel that I could contribute well to the ICA. I have enjoyed serving as a trial judge these past 9 years. It has been incredibly challenging, but incredibly rewarding at the same time. Before I became a judge, I was an appellate lawyer for the Office of the Public Defender for 8 years. I enjoyed appellate litigation. I look forward to going back to it if confirmed. A diverse ICA is a strong ICA. It's important for the ICA to have people with a trial judge's background on it. We are reviewing trial judges' decisions if you're an associate judge of the ICA. You're reviewing trial judges' decisions from all over the courts, all over the state. It helps to understand context and nuances better, and I believe it would help strengthen analysis and better decision-making if one also has a trial judge's background. Before I was an appellate lawyer at the Public Defender's Office, I was a trial lawyer there for 7 years. Being a trial lawyer helped me to be a better appellate lawyer, and I feel that being a trial judge will also help me to be a better appellate judge. The law is about cases, precedents, statutes, and rules, but at its core, law is about people. I have dealt with many situations and people in the hardest and most heartbreaking kinds of cases in my 9 years as a trial judge. I will never forget the stories and the experiences of the many people I saw coming through my courtroom. I will bring the frontline experience and sensitivity of being a trial judge with me to the appellate court if confirmed. The ICA is a workhorse court. It handles 80% of all appeals in the state courts. It's important that a jurist for this court, handling the vast majority of appeals, is someone who serves with aloha, the aloha spirit. We have a law in the books, HRS 5-7.5, that talks about the aloha spirit, incorporating principles of kindness, unity, agreeableness, humility, and patience. I believe I have that spirit. My values come from my parents, my father, who was born and raised on Kekaha Plantation in Kauai, my mother, who was a school teacher, who was an immigrant from Okinawa, Japan. I was born and raised in Liliha, in a multi-generational household with my Issei, or first-generation grandparents, who were also from Okinawa and from Kekaha Plantation. My parents and grandparents taught me plantation values and immigrant values of honesty, humility, hard work, and sacrifice. My father worked 33 years at the Dole can plant in Iwilei. In 1962, he started there as a tool and die maker. He later became a supervisor, and he ended up as a superintendent when he retired in 1996. He was the last employee left at Dole can plant who was responsible for closing down the plant in 1996. When I was in high school, in 1985, my parents opened a small business. It was a little flower shop in downtown Honolulu. From 1985 up until the birth of my twin daughters in 2004, when my parents retired to babysit my children full-time so that I could continue my legal career, my parents ran that business for 19 years. They worked incredibly hard. 364 days a year, they took only a single New Year's Day off. My family's collective efforts and sacrifice helped finance my expensive East Coast education. For my sister and I, working alongside our parents those 19 years in our family's small business, that helped shape our work ethic and character. My last name, Nakasone, contains the kanji, or character, for root. The ne stands for root in Japanese. I am someone who has never forgotten my roots. I am firmly rooted in my culture, both the Japanese culture and Okinawan culture. I'm rooted in my community. Before I became a judge, I served the Honolulu JACL chapter, an Asian Pacific American civil rights organization, for 11 years. I've been involved as a parent in my children's public schools, serving on the school community council as president of the PTA, and also as a music booster vice president for the Roosevelt High School Music Boosters Club. I've also been rooted in my professional community of lawyers. I've served alongside many members of our bar on various boards. All of these experiences have shaped me to become the person and the jurist that I am today. And I believe that all of these experiences have well prepared me for the challenges and great responsibility of serving as an associate judge on the ICA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your opening statement. Members, any questions?
Just not so much a question. I just wanted to tell.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to thank Karen for coming and visiting with me and everything she's speaking. And it was a beautiful talk story. Got to know her a little better. But to going in the position that she's in, she has the love and the passion. You can hear it in her voice even now. And it was just a godsend that I got to sit there and talk story with her. And I wish you the very best. And thank you for visiting with me, and thank you for educating me on the appellate courts. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a basic question.
Is that Senator Kim?
Yeah, Ms. Nakasone, so
ahead.
you are moving from the, let's see, currently you're with the First Circuit Court?
Yes.
Yes, and going to the Court of Appeals. So what is it that you prefer to be on the Court of Appeals versus what you're doing now?
I think it's a different type of challenge, and I really firmly believe that the appellate courts should have people with a trial judge's background. I really think that strengthens the court. There should be people of diverse backgrounds, and on the intermediate court as well as the Supreme Court. And having a few trial judges within the group of that serves on the ICA or the Supreme Court is very important. And I was an appellate lawyer. I enjoy appellate work, and I believe I can bring all of those skills and everything I learned being a trial judge for 9 years to be a good appellate court judge.
And your appointment is for 10 years, and we appreciate your willingness to serve. Is this something that you intend to want to fulfill your term of 10 years on this court?
I do.
Okay, so we have that commitment from you. Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Okay, I have a couple. So obviously at the federal level, the issue of abortion is front and center again. Will you support Roe v. Wade and hold women's health as the law of the land and oppose efforts to undermine access to safe and legal abortion?
So I am bound by the precedent that's been set by the Hawaii Supreme Court. We have strong privacy protections under our Hawaii Constitution, which currently guarantee those rights that you speak of. As an appellate court judge, I would follow that precedent, and I have no problem following that precedent.
Okay. So as you correctly point out, there's law from the state as well as the feds from the federal level on a woman's right to choose. What would you see as I mean, there was a time when abortions were illegal in Hawaii, and if I recall correctly, Hawaii was one of the first states to decriminalize abortions. If the new court, the new U.S. Supreme Court, were to overrule Roe v. Wade, what do you see as the legal landscape that we as a state, or you as a state appellate court, would be left with at that juncture?
Our court has historically and continually has broadly interpreted the Hawaii Constitution, and our Supreme Court has the freedom and has initiative and has done so many times in its history to broadly interpret the Hawaii Constitution in an expansive manner to better protect the rights, the civil rights of the people of Hawaii.
Okay. It's with some reluctance that I ask this question because it doesn't seem like it should have to be asked, but I'm going to anyway. Will you base your opinions on healthcare cases upon accurate science, clinical testing, and up-to-date data rather than religious or ideological beliefs?
This is how I think I'm allowed to answer that question, Senator, is as a trial judge and also as an appellate court judge, especially as an appellate court judge, we are required to base our decisions on the law and the record that is before the court. So in the situation that you described, I believe that we would be getting a record where a trial court has already made findings and conclusions. Perhaps there may be a judgment that has those kinds of findings and conclusions. And we would be reviewing the decision of the trial court, whether they properly applied the standards in arriving at their decision.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Senator Keo'olole, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a follow-up question to that, Judge Nakasone. You know, in your role, should you be confirmed as an appellate court judge, I'm wondering how you would consider that commitment to follow the record. Should it be based on newer developing, soundly based and evidence science, and how that comports with your commitment to following precedent when there are bound to be instances where the precedents themselves are based more on either obsolete science or potentially social or cultural or political norms, of the past.
Is at the ICA level, we're applying the law that exists. At that level of court, we're not creating new precedent. I mean, that's not the court's role. We would be required to apply the legal standards to the record in front of us. And I think that's the best way I can answer your question and still follow the Code of Judicial Conduct. Yeah.
I think, any follow-up, Senator?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how to follow up to that, because I think you do understand it sounds like you understand my question. But I do think that at the appellate court, there will be instances where precedents come under scrutiny because of new facts, because of changes in recognized science. I think the pressure for that might accelerate in the future. And then also because of changing cultural and social norms. And I'm just wondering how you view your responsibility and your approach to those scenarios. should they be placed before you as an appellate court judge? Because that's obviously not the, I mean, these might just be specific instances or maybe rare instances, but they, you talk about the expansive design of the state constitution in terms of its protection of individual civil rights. And in the case of abortion, in the case of climate change, policing, we are seeing shifting cultural norms, and we're seeing shifting conclusions to policies and political precedents based on new science. And so these are issues that will come before the court inevitably during your tenure. So can you expound on your answer?
On the appellate courts, you'd be reviewing the decisions of a trial court rulings. And I guess to the extent that if there was an improper bias or insufficient consideration of things in the record that an appellate court feels should have been considered more or thoroughly, that is something I would be required to do. The role of the courts is to administer justice. So if you see a record that does not reflect that, within the rule that the ICA has, and we do have a duty to follow the precedent. To the extent there is gray, I think not everything's black and white. There's going to be gray. And I think how I've approached those situations as a trial judge is you look at the precedent, but the precedent doesn't give a clear answer a lot of the time. So to me, I would look at the principles. And principles are informed by why the law was made. We look at legislative intent. And that's how I would approach the things that are gray. So I wouldn't favor just a mechanistic black and white application if the situation or the record calls for a close review of things that should have been more considered and deliberated on more. I think that's the best answer I can give right now. So.
Okay, thank you.
Members, any other questions?
Yes, I had a question, Chair.
Senator Gabbard, please.
Yes, Judge Nakasone, what are your thoughts on the Supreme Court's decision to require the release of prisoners during the COVID pandemic?
I think it was a very difficult and considered decision. And I was one of the judges who had to follow those orders. I can tell you there was tremendous pressure. And time was of the essence when we were making those decisions. At the time that order came down, it was in March, when our understanding of the pandemic and spread was still evolving. There was a lot of fear, but the Supreme Court felt that that type of order was necessary based on they had an argument. I believe they considered the positions of the various parties, and that is the decision they made. I was one of the trial judges who executed those decisions. They were very difficult, but we weighed the criteria that was given to us, and we made those decisions. And now there's a second order, and we did, on very short notice, we complied with the Supreme Court's deadline to review all the current cases using the second order and the standard. So, now, you folks are dealing with in your capacities, we're dealing with an unprecedented crisis, and people are trying to come up with the best solutions to protect the community. So I know that it was controversial, but the Supreme Court felt it was required, and as a frontline trial judge, I executed it in the best of my ability, which is my job.
Thank you, Judge, and thank you for stepping forward to serve our state.
I follow up on that question.
Senator Kim, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Nakasone, you mentioned tremendous pressure. Tremendous pressure from whom?
We have to do a balancing in every case. You have to balance the risk and then the fact that the population had to be reduced. And we're having to make those decisions quickly because of the urgency and the emergency situation that was going on at the time. So when I talk about pressure, it is that pressure. It is a pressure that a criminal trial judge deals with all the time. But given the uncertainty and the fear and the unprecedented nature of the pandemic, it was just a really tough time, but we made those decisions.
You also said that you had to make decisions to protect the community, but majority in the community, outside of the prison community and the families, felt that they were not being protected, and also believed with the evidence that many of those who were released ended up committing crimes again. How do you feel about that?
Well, I believe people have their perceptions. I believe that the report of the master indicated that the recidivism rate, when you compare it to recidivism rates in general, that those were actually pretty low. I know that the way sometimes things are covered in the media, people's perception is that people have very negative perceptions of how it was done, why it was done, and the court's decisions. But if you look at the last report of the special master, it did look at the percentages of recidivism rates in general versus these, and I believe these were comparable or even lower than regular recidivism rates. I recall that's what the special master's final report concluded.
I know, we read the master's report, and certainly that they weren't being protected really rose to a very high level. And certainly this is something that I think needs to be balanced better. And back in March, it seemed like there were no cases in the prisons at that time. Of course, that has changed, and I believe that it's because we didn't do the proper contact tracing, we didn't provide the equipment to the guards, we didn't nip it in the bud when it first happened, with the guards bringing it in. So those are the issues, and yet it's the general public that suffered because of the release of people who have committed crimes that, for whatever the sentences were. And I know some of that they were on hold, but anyway, I think those are issues that should be considered more. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Okay, I still have a couple more. So in 2018, Native Hawaiians were 40% of people incarcerated in Hawaii, despite only constituting 20% of the population. Similarly, 5% of those incarcerated were Black, African American, despite constituting only 2% of the population. In your new role, how would you address those disparities?
Well, I would use all the knowledge that I gained and my experience dealing with criminal justice issues as a lawyer and as a trial judge, especially sitting on criminal calendar. On the appellate courts, I know that the courts, the judiciary has commissions and committees that deal with these sort of systemic issues. And if called to serve, if my service is needed, and I do have a lot of experience and knowledge, I would be happy to serve on those types of initiatives.
You mentioned before that, and the vast majority of the time, I believe your answer was the correct answer, which is, excuse me, you'll be following precedent either from the Supreme Court or you'll be following the law, the statute, excuse me, the statutory law. But as an appellate judge, there will be times when novel issues will come up that have not been decided by in a written decision by an appellate court before. So it seems to me like you're underselling your new potential position a little bit, because there will be times when you'll be making new law, and I mean, you always run the risk that the Supreme Court, if it's appealed up, will overrule it, but sometimes they won't take up the cert, and sometimes they'll affirm you. So you will have some influence on what the law is, as opposed to just interpreting it. So I guess the question is, with some of these hot button issues that we've talked about already, how does that all play in your mind in terms of what authority do you look at? Do you look at other states' authority that's only persuasive in terms of whether we have to follow it or not? But what do you look at in terms of those probably fairly few instances, but those instances where you will be in the position of helping to make new law?
I mean, I've had to deal with that as a trial judge. We've had to make decisions where the law is not clear, and I would bring that same type of interpretation and deliberation and studied consideration of the issues and the impact of the decision. We are confined as appellate courts to how the issue is brought up before us and what is in the record. But to the extent that we are making decisions where no exists by our existing precedent, even though it doesn't squarely tell us what the answer is here, I would look at what motivates that precedent, the reasoning, and I always start with what is the Hawaii precedent, because our precedent, a lot of it is guided by the Hawaii Constitution. Our Hawaii Constitution has on many occasions been broadly interpreted to give broader protections to our citizens. And so that's how our precedent, that's the common thread, I think, through a lot of our precedent. I would look to other states that may have statutes or constitutional provisions that may be similar to ours. But ultimately, I would be guided by our own precedent and how we have construed issues similar to that, and any constitutional provisions that it may involve, how we've historically given broader interpretation. That would be a big guide in how I would negotiate or maneuver through some new gray issue.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, I think we will conclude our questioning of Judge Nakasone at this point. Thank you so much for making yourself available today. We're not trying to kick you off necessarily, but if you need to go, you're welcome to and leave the meeting. If you just want to watch the rest of it, you're more than welcome. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to Judiciary Communication number 1. This is nominating Karen L. Homa for consideration and confirmation of District Court of the First Circuit for a term to expire in 6 years. The testimony we have starts with Adrian Lavarius in support, and then Adrian, another, I don't know if it's the same Adrian Lavarius, another testimony in support. Alan Shintani in support, Ashley Lukens in support, Audrey Hidano in support, Bruce Voss in support, Craig Wagnild in support, Crystal Rose in support, Derek Kobayashi in support, Francis Anderson in support, Greg Thielen in support, Harvey Lung in support, Hawaii Women's Lawyers in support, Jeffrey Zimmerman in support, John Rowe in support, Matthew Shannon in support, Michael C. Carroll in support, Ryan Engel in support, Sarah Love in support, Stephanie Sakamoto from BI Building Industries Association Hawaii in support, Mike Keto in support, and last on our list we have Mr. Gregory Fry again with the Hawaii State Bar Association, who I believe is still here to testify on this nominee.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. Just a few more minutes of your time. I appreciate the entire committee. Often, our HSBA committee gets to know a nominee through the extensive vetting process that is described in detail in the written testimony. In this case, that is not true. We have worked alongside with Karen Homa for several years as she sat as a dedicated member and board officer of the Hawaii State Bar Association. Many times we read when we get testimony, and you folks no doubt exactly the same way, that someone's gain is our loss. I think we can say with confidence at the Hawaii State Bar Association the exact same thing. Karen Homa has decided to dedicate herself to be a very good judge in our opinion, and that's why the board, on behalf of the association, designated her qualified. She would have followed me as the 2021 Hawaii State Bar Association president, but instead she chooses, if confirmed, to be a dedicated judge. This state and its community and citizens seeking justice, it is their gain. It is truly, however, the association's loss. Again, we do deem her qualified.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fry. Members, any questions for Mr. Fry? If not, Ms. Homa, would you like to make your opening statement?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair
Thank you.
Rhodes, Vice Chair Keohokalole, and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Thank you for your review and consideration of my nomination today. I'm honored and I'm humbled to be sitting here, and I'm also excited. I thought I would tell you a little bit about my background and where I come from. It's somewhat similar actually to Judge Nakasone's in the sense that my parents were also immigrants. They're immigrants from Finland. My mother immigrated to the U.S. as a baby and the youngest of 6 children in 1937. My father was also born in Finland. He was born in a sauna. He had the equivalent of a 6th grade education, and he immigrated to the United States in 1959. They met in Astoria, Oregon, which is a community on the Oregon coast. There is a small group of Finnish American immigrants there. They met, they married. They married in June of 1961, and I came along in June of 1962. It took me a few years to figure out that that was less than 9 months after they met and married. I grew up in Oregon, and I always intended to live there. I always loved hiking, skiing, going to the beach. I always thought I would get married, have children, and live in a town next to my mom and dad. I went to Lewis and Clark College in Portland. I went to Willamette Law School in Salem. Then along came my first husband, and he's a wonderful man from Hawai'i, and he was a year ahead of me in law school in Salem. So I made the serious decision that after I graduated from law school, I would move to Hawaii, which I did. When I told my parents that I was going to move to Hawaii, my dad asked me, well, would you please take the Oregon bar first, because I know you're going to be back in Oregon. And I said, Dad, I will do that for you. So I did. In July of 1989, I took the Oregon bar exam. I moved to Hawaii on August 15th, 1989. I worked at Liberty House downtown in the Christmas department, a job that I loved. I waited to take the February 1990 bar exam. I took the February 1990 bar exam, and when they, during the bar exam, they announced that then Judge Moon, who was just elevated to the Hawaii Supreme Court, he had one clerk, but he was looking for another clerk. And so I applied for that job, and I was very lucky to get that job. I then I clerked for Justice Moon for 2 years, and then the wonderful thing, or not so wonderful thing, was I was married. I was working very hard at the firm that I'm at now, and but the marriage wasn't so great. And so we decided maybe I should take a job where I didn't work as many hours. So I did. So that's my brief sojourn from Bays Long to the AG's office in 1993. That lasted just a few months. And my former husband is a wonderful person. We are still friends to this day, but we just decided that we didn't need more time together. We needed less time together. So we ended up getting divorced. I went back to my firm. When I had to call my parents and tell them the bad news that I was getting divorced, my dad said, well, so you're going to move back to Oregon. You're going to move back home. And I said, no, Dad, Hawaii is my home. And so that's 1993. And I have been at my law firm, the same law firm, ever since. I was an associate from 1992 to 1999. I became a partner in 1999, and I became a named partner in 2007. Public service has always been very important to me. I've contributed to many pro bono services and activities over the years, and also community service. One of the things I've been doing in the last few years is I'm a participant in the Hawaii Literacy Program. As part of that program, every month we go to Kohio Park Terrace or to Mayor Wright Housing, and we read and we make crafts and we do little treats and stuff with the kids. That's been really fun. I've missed that this year because we haven't been able to do it because of COVID. I'm also a member of the Rotary Club of Honolulu. Some of the projects we've done there are I've planted trees at Palama Settlement, and I have painted and done other work at the Fernhurst Transitional Women's Housing in Makiki. So those all have been great projects that I've had the opportunity to work on. I'd like to explain, if I might, why I have applied and why it would be such a huge privilege for me to serve as a district court judge at this point if I would be confirmed. To me, being a judge is the epitome of a legal career. There would be no higher distinction for me after the years I've spent in civil litigation to serve as a judge. I've been a litigator for 28 years. I enjoy that very much. I know and I understand civil litigation very well. I think I'm a problem solver, and I think I have the experience to serve as a judge. I also think I have the character to serve as a judge. I have a strong sense of what's right and wrong, and I have a very strong sense of fairness and equality, and that comes from my Finnish heritage and the kind of things that my mom and dad taught me when I grew up. I'm a decisive person. I'm also a very compassionate person. I understand that many of the people who come before district court have never been to court before. It's their first experience. I understand that. I understand that English may not be their first language, or that some of them may not even speak English at all. My dad never did learn how to speak English very well, and I understand that very much. I am really honored to be appointed to the district court. From what I read in the paper, there's a lot of work to be done over there. If I'm confirmed, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and go to work. I have a passion for case management and trial management. I think everyone has the right to be heard, and all cases need to be judged on the merits, but at the same time, the court system needs to move forward in a fast and quick method and in a quick, efficient way. So if I am confirmed, my approach would be to balance those two interests. Thank you very much. I can answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Senator Kim, go ahead. Oh, you're, okay, I think you're unmuted now. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Karen, thank you very much. You had me at Liberty House. I also worked at Liberty House and loved the holiday time when I was in the gift wrapping. You also had me at Palama Settlement and KPT. But other than that, I do have, basic 3 questions that I intend to ask everyone. You did a great job with your introduction. You covered, in fact, 2 of the questions I was going to ask. Why district court? You certainly answered that at length. And what kind of judge you would be. And you so gave me an insight as to what kind of judge you will be. So those questions were answered. I did want to ask, was this your first choice being in district court? Is this the only position you applied for, or did you apply for other positions?
I have applied for circuit court as well. I mean, my practice area is civil litigation, so either district court or circuit court, I have no desire, and I've never applied for an appellate court position. So I'm very excited to be appointed to district court.
So are you willing to commit to the 6 years of your appointment, or if the other position open up, would you be jumping over at the first?
I intend to serve as long as possible in the district court. I'm very grateful to Chief Justice Rechtenwald for appointing me to this position, and from the judges I know who serve in district court, they love their job. So as of now, it is fully my intent to serve the full 6-year term, and even a second one if things go really well.
Oh, certainly appreciate that. As you said, district court is the closest to the people, and we really need to get commitments from our judges because the workload is there, and to have some continuity with our judges is so important. And so I really appreciate that you're willing to commit to the 6 years. With that, I appreciate your willingness to serve at the district court level.
Thank you so much, Senator Kim.
Thank you. Any other members? Any other questions, members?
I have something I want to say.
Senator Favela, go ahead.
Again, it was a privilege and honor meeting you in my office and getting to talk about your background. I feel real confident in having, you serving in a district court for our people of Hawaii, coming from a very diverse background and making Hawaii your home because of the love of Hawaii and its people. So I just wanted to tell you thank you again. It was really a breath of fresh air talking to you and knowing that, our people of Hawaii will be in good hands. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Favela.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, I have a couple. So, well, as way of background, I've represented Chinatown for quite some time, and we have lots and lots of cases where there are nothing particularly serious, petty misdemeanors, maybe a misdemeanor once in a while, violations, park closure, citations, things like that. And of course, you're supposed to decide each case on the facts, and that I understand, and that's the way it should be. My question has to do with the sentencing phase. If you get a defendant who's been convicted again, and it's his 20, I mean, some of these cases are just insane. Some of these situations are just insane. You'll have over 200 convictions, and this person is still not in jail for any period of time. So my question is, how, when you're looking at someone, once the case is that you've got before you is decided, and you're looking at the sentencing options, how are you going to weigh if you get somebody who has a number of previous convictions like that?
Well, first, I really do believe that each case has to be looked at on their merits, and each individual has to be looked at individually. I don't think it's fair to judge anyone based on some cookie cutter set of things. What may work for one defendant may not work for another defendant at all. I think another major consideration that has to be taken into thinking about this is the propensity for any sort of violence or harm against any individual. So, and would be also open to creative solutions. I have some things to learn about criminal law. I have started reading the statutes. If I'm confirmed, I definitely intend to go watch and observe the other judges in district court. I have something to learn, but one of the things I would like to really learn about are some creative options for sentencing. Is community service an option? Or what kind of options are available? Are mentorships even available for those type of defendants that routinely come in front of the court and need some sort of guidance to get them on the right path? But I'm very open to creative solutions in that regard. But I have things to learn.
So when you say that it works for the defendant, I can hear my constituents saying right now, well, who cares whether it works for the defendant? Does it work for everybody else who's living in the community? How do you respond to that?
Well, that's obviously a consideration that has to be taken in place. If there's a defendant there who has been committing the same sort of property offenses in the same community, then I think definitely that has to be taken into account. And because you're right, that if somebody continually causes property damage or
there are two other factors that pop up a lot in these kind of cases. Either there's some kind of substance abuse, or there's a mental illness, or in many cases both. What are your thoughts about how to handle someone if it becomes clear to you that you're either about to convict somebody of a crime that was driven by the need to steal because they had a drug problem, or because they're hearing voices telling them to do something they're not supposed to do? How do you address those kind of situations?
I'm hopeful there's some programs, some sort of diversion programs or other programs where a defendant, for example, with a drug problem can be allowed to go into some sort of drug treatment program, a diversion program, or some sort of program like that. On the mental health issue, the same response. Is there some sort of program? Where can they get treatment? What are the various options that are available for treatment for a defendant that has obvious mental health issues? What sort of therapies are available? What sort of evaluation places are open to them? All of those kind of things.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Senator Kitten.
I have another question, if I may.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you about the landlord-tenant code, in the sense that a majority, based on my experience, having to go to court for a landlord-tenant code for an eviction of a tenant, is that 80% of the cases are landlord-tenant, and it seems as though the judges in the district court seem to side a lot with the tenants over and beyond what's in the landlord-tenant code. And I think the concern that I've heard and the concern that I had in experiencing that is that the judges do not necessarily follow the code. They go far beyond the code, which then impacts the landlord to some degree. Do you have any comments on that and how you would handle that?
I have, in my civil career, I have represented both landlords, property owners, and tenants, and I am aware of the issues involving that. Again, my philosophy is that disputes need to be resolved as quickly as possible. Of course, right now there is a freeze on residential landlord-tenant, but on commercial landlord-tenant, my observations, and again, I haven't sat on the other side of the wall, I don't know for sure, but I think those cases could move along maybe a little bit more quickly than they do.
I agree with you, and I think what happened is when I've asked this question of other nominees in the past, they said that, well, we need to give more education to the tenants and the landlords coming in, explain how our system works. And I said, instead of trying to get everybody to jump through the court's hoops, but the court needs to make it more user-friendly, because you come in the very first time and they just want you to say, you know, do you agree or disagree? Then you have to come back again, and then you have to come back again, and you don't even go to trial until two or three times before coming before the court. It takes up my time, it takes up the court's time, the tenant's time. We have to find parking, they have to find parking. I mean, there is a lot of problems there, and I've asked all the district court judges as to what is it can you do and take a lead, and how do we fix that so that the system works for the tenants as well as the landlord, so there's that balance and it doesn't waste a lot of people's time having to come back multiple times to the court to get something that's cut and dry. I can see the cases that, you know, have a lot of nuances, but there's certain cases where, in our case, this one tenant, where we gave all the notices, all the timelines, gave more than enough time, and still the judge gave, after all those months, 6 months, gave another month and a half, you know, for the tenant to be there. So, you know, those are the concerns that I hope that as a district court and other district court nominees listening will take it upon themselves as you go forward to see how we can fix that, because that is one of the biggest types of cases that is taken up by district court, from what I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions?
I just got one question I just wanted to bring up since we.
Senator Favela, go ahead.
Yeah, so I noticed you served on the Alamoana and Kaka'ako Neighborhood Board. Can you tell me how was your experience, and what did you like about serving on that board?
Thank you, Senator Favela. That was my first and only entree into elected public service. I admire you all for that type of public service. It was a very interesting time. It was at the time when the convention center was being built and the Walmart was being built in that area. And there were a lot of concerned citizens about both of those projects at the time. And so there were a lot of hearings, and a lot of constituents came and testified in front of that board. It was a very worthwhile public service venture. And again, I just admire all of you for serving as elected officials.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? If not, thank you so much, Ms. Homa. We'll go ahead and move on to the next nominee. Thanks for your time, and we'll, as I mentioned before, we're not voting today. It'll be on Monday. So, thank you very much. Okay, next up we have Judiciary Communication number 2, Tracy S. Pukui, for District Court of the First Circuit, and for a term to expire in 6 years. Testifiers on this nominee begin with Catherine Gutierrez in support, Crystal Glendon in support, Donovan Odo in support, Gary Suganuma in support, Dale Kawamura in support, George A. Burke in support, Hawaii Women Lawyers in support, Jamie Miyasato in support, Catherine M.K. Nesty in support, Megan K. Cow in support, Michelle Agsalda in support, Mitsuko Takahashi in support, Okechukwu Amadi in support, Paige Ogata in support, Paul Aoki in support, Richard Llewellyn in support, Roger Thomas in support, Rowena Edens in support, Stacy Fujikami in support, Stephen Atwell in support, Taryn Tomasa in support, Timothy Ho in support, Walter Robbie in support, Jennifer Ng in support, Monica K.S. Choi in support, and finally, Gregory Fry for the Hawaii State Bar Association, who I believe is still here with us. Go ahead.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I am back again just for a couple of words. I have tried very hard and will continue to try very hard to just give you some information which is a bit different and supplemental to the written testimony that we provide of our vetting process. As we went through the process with this nominee, we were clearly struck favorably with the over 22 years of practice that she has had, and during those years it became crystal clear to us by those that we spoke to and dealt with that she has an extremely wide and varied experience in practically all areas of the law. So much so it was described to us sometime by some that it was almost as if she had been practicing for double the amount of years that she has, given the amount of experience. She was both in private practice and government practice, civil law, criminal law, constitutional law, civil rights law, employment law. Each area of the law was described to us, and we verified that she works literally, politically correct or not, like a dog, devoted, focused, determined. She has been described, and I, in my time with her, would absolutely agree as a litigator for decades myself, as an extremely talented and gifted litigator. We as a committee and as a board thought that you could not have a more well-rounded and varied and experienced book of knowledge going into the district court as a judge. We therefore found her qualified.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fry. Members, any questions for Mr. Fry? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Fukui, would you like to make your opening statement?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Keohokalole, and the Judiciary Committee. I'd like to start with telling you, the committee, a little bit about myself. I too come from a working, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. I was trying to see if I could see you too. Hang on just a second.
Okay.
Okay, there you are. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No problem. I come from a working class family as well. My father is a lifelong civil servant, first for the federal government and then subsequently for the state. My mother, he met my mother while in the military in Okinawa. She came with him back to Hawaii. She had a high school education, barely spoke any English. She worked through most of our childhood at an okazu in Kailua. And so they raised me humble and working class. Unfortunately for them, I had a strike of independence. From very young age, I became quite rebellious. I was working actually from a very young age. As soon as I could get a worker's permit, I worked at Napa Auto Parts in Kailua, Craig's Bakery in Kailua, and I had my own money, but that also brought with it independence. And so I went a little off track as far as running into trouble, causing them a lot of grief. And I stayed actually that way for quite some time. I still went to college. I went to KCC first, and then UH. And what actually changed for me was the moment one of my jobs, and I did work 3 jobs while in undergraduate. One of those jobs brought me into a courtroom. And for the first time, I was inspired by something other than what life can do for me, but instead what I could do for life. What I saw was an important issue and people's stories being told. It was a disability discrimination case that was being tried in a federal courtroom. Every single person in that courtroom had played such an important role in having the story be told on both sides. And the judge, it got quite heated at sometimes, and the judge was effective at keeping order and letting that story be told in a very to actually start applying myself in school, because I wanted to be a part of that. I knew no matter what happened, I would be one of those people in the courtroom. And so since then, since graduating from law school, that is what I have been. I've actually been almost every single person in that courtroom, including a juror. And at this point, based on the knowledge and experiences that I've gained, I think the place where I can make the biggest contribution, because I've been in every single seat, plaintiff, defense, attacking police action, defending police action, I think the place where I can have the biggest contribution is on the bench. Because of that those experiences rather, I think that what it brings as far as my, when I sit on the bench, if I'm confirmed, is that I have a balanced approach because I've seen so many sides of it. A balanced approach that looking at the facts and the law. I'm also an everyday person because of the trials and tribulations that I've been through. I see district court as everyday people court. And I see them as the people that I grew up with, as the people that I hung out with. And so I think that I have, based on those experiences, ability to communicate and be heard, and as well as understand what they're trying to say and hear what they're trying to say. And I think that balance is key in district court because that is who you're dealing with. And I strongly feel that that is where I can make a contribution, and I very much so want to be act in that capacity and help in that capacity.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any questions for Ms. Fukui? Senator Kim, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Fukui. Thank you very much. I have the basic questions that I want to ask. So did you apply for any other court besides the district court?
I did apply for circuit court, and I will be withdrawing that application if I get confirmed.
Okay, so is this a court you want to be able to, or are you willing to commit to the 6 years in case a circuit court position comes up?
Absolutely. So district court is actually the first court that I ever applied to, and I applied multiple times. I didn't actually start applying for circuit until I started to maybe get a little discouraged that it wasn't going to happen at district. I do feel like that's where I need to be at district court. So I did apply for the last 2 circuit positions, but like I said, prior to that, I repeatedly applied for district court.
And as we all know, the district court is really the people's court. What kind of judge do you think you will be as a district court judge? Based on all your background, and you know, you're going to be a tough judge, you're going to be a lenient judge. What kind of judge do you see yourself being when people walk out of the court and have to comment about, you know, their experience with you as a district court?
First of all, I mean, if they're going to say anything, I hope they think that I'm a fair judge, that I do show compassion, but also that I stand firm when I need to be. I am an assertive person as well. I do think that each individual situation might call for different types of approaches. I do think that I have the flexibility to be able to deliver the type that's needed. I'm also a very practical person and a good judge of character. So I think that I read people in situations quite well. I've been told that I'm street smart. So I do think that will come into play as far as deciding what approach needs to be with respect to each situation and each person. Like I said, everyone's can be different. I do think all of those things will combine in helping me to help our community and the people that appear before me.
I think what you said, street smart, that's something that is often said about myself, that, having that street smarts, having that understanding of what other people have to go through. And sometimes it's not what you learned in the classroom or in the books and what you read, but your experiences on the street and with real life. And I think is so needed on the district court level. My last question to you again would be similar with Karen, is that on the landlord-tenant code, I'm not sure if you've had a lot of experience with the landlord-tenant code, but that's certainly one thing that I feel that the court could really streamline, and would hope that we can get commitments from the nominees today on their willingness to look at the process on how, and I'm not saying we should change the law, I'm not saying it should bend more in favor with the tenant, with the landlord, but whatever the law says, it should be applied, and that the process in the court should be made more user-friendly for the tenants and the landlords. Because a lot of the landlords are not large landlords. They own one unit to help pay for the rent. They own, they're small landowners, and they're not real familiar with some of the process, like the larger landowners who hire people to represent them. Many of the small landowners or the one owner unit comes in and certainly have no wherewithal as to the process. So can we get your commitment that you will look into this?
Yes, so like Karen, I actually represented both tenants and landlords. What also I'd like to add is that I have an administrative background. I'm a supervisor currently with the city. But how that is relevant is because no matter where I go, what I always do is just in my nature is to look at ways I can improve, whether it be the work environment around me or just the system itself. I can't shut this mind off for some reason. Sometimes it keeps me up at night. But as a result, I can tell you that I'm willing and wanting to serve on any committees where I could try to improve that. And I do think that my background will help. I don't know where the judiciary's perspective is, but I'm definitely excited about learning that. And that way I can combine everything and make a difference, because that's really what I want to do.
You strike me as that kind of person, because I'm the same way. My mind's always going. So I trust that you will be doing that, and hopefully we will be able to maybe communicate a little bit more as once you get confirmed, and how we can try to streamline things. So thank you for your willingness to serve. And I really have to say this, I appreciate we have so many women that's being appointed today. So I think that's important that we also have a balance of gender on in the courts as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Members, any other questions?
Chair, I have a question. Oh,
hang on. Let me go.
Senator Gabbard.
Senator Gabbard first, and then Senator Keokalole.
Thank you, Chair.
I don't recognize this guy. Who is this?
What do you mean? Come on.
I don't recognize him.
It's the COVID look. Tracy, and thank you for meeting with me. Question, John Hashimoto's testimony in support of you, he states, and I quote, "As the litigation division head in the Office of the Corporation Counsel, Tracy not only handles a full caseload of the most difficult and complex cases filed against the city, she is also responsible for managing a team of deputies, communicating with representatives of other city departments, and juggling a myriad of administrative duties." So my question is, how do you think your corp counsel experience would inform your work as a judge?
I think that it is directly relevant. I think the judge's role doesn't end in the courtroom. I do think it's about being part of the community, working with different agencies, and trying to implement change. I think that, as I was telling Senator Mikado Kim, I did have implemented changes in procedures and systemic changes with the city. I have experience in that, and I do know, based on that, that I can't, I need to really understand everybody's part and everybody's view before I can begin to suggest making changes, because unless you know how a decision here might trickle down and affect down the line, then if you just make decisions without knowing that, then that's when you're headed for trouble. That I learned by experience, that you need to go out and make sure you hear from everybody, and that way you can make informed decisions and suggestions about how to make changes.
Thank you, Teresa.
Senator Keokalole, you had a question?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Kui, for applying and for being with us. Similar to the chair's question for the prior nominee, for many individuals with mental health issues or who are at risk, the first formal contact they have with the criminal justice system comes in district court. I assume you know this very well from your time as a public defender. And more often than I think we all would wish, that initial interaction and too often the subsequent interactions of those individuals with the system result in more of a downward spiral of recidivism and personal deterioration than a pathway out. And so not always, but too often I think we can all agree that is the reality. And I'm wondering if you can address your potential role as a facilitator
public defender to now. There's been tremendous changes and progress. It certainly could be more, but I do think that there's more tools now to get people the help with, whether it be mental health or drug abuse. I do think that it's my responsibility to take into consideration that those may be a factor in what's occurring before, why this person keeps appearing before this court. And I am very, like you said, very aware that is often a factor based on my experiences at public defender. So I think that it starts with awareness, and then also being aware of the tools that I can use to get people the help through the judicial system to the extent that we are able to. I did read the Senate Bill 1620 extensively. I do think that is a tool that the court can utilize, and it was a problem when I was a public defender in diverting people to mental health, because they actually ended up staying in jail longer than the maximum time as they were waiting for those services to be set up. But I think that progress like Senate Bill 1620 allows that to happen more expeditiously. And so I believe that those kind of tools, and like I said, I'm willing to serve on committees to make other suggestions about what the courts can do as far as getting people the help they need to avoid recidivism that is based on those type of mental health or drug abuse issues.
So how do you do it? Because there's a competing interest here. The example put forth earlier by Senator Kim about the release of individuals incarcerated because of the COVID emergency, on an individual basis might serve the needs of justice, but then there's an overall public perception, and then there's just a systemic, there are these systemic results as a function of the individual administration of particular charges or cases. And you're just not always going to have access to the types of services that each individual is going to need to help them emerge out of the system, as opposed to, being caught up in the system and spiraling downward. So I'm wondering how you plan, if you do serve in this role and serve in those efforts, how do you plan to balance those interests, because they are often competing?
So, with respect to community and their interests, I think that the defendants that appear in front of me, getting them the help they need, actually benefits both the individual and the community, because putting somebody in jail is both a punishment and a deterrent for the normal individual. But when you're talking about somebody with mental health issues or drug abuse issues, that doesn't necessarily serve either purpose. And so if you don't get them the help that they need, the community actually is going to suffer by them repeating the crimes over and over and over. So I do think it's actually in the interest of both the individual and the community to try to utilize the tools that are available. And if tools are not available, then I would like to be part of the solution to work with committees in any way I can to create those tools to better serve both individuals and the community. So I understand that we're limited with what we have, and I have to work in those parameters, but
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your willingness to engage in this and your commitment to proceed going forward. I do think it's important, like Senator Kim said, this is the people's court, and I think that the types of efforts that you reference, I think, are the solution, but the competing interests you will likely face in district court is just the overall volume of individual cases and circumstances that I think currently make it difficult to balance with the overall systemic changes that are necessary. So thank you for engaging in the conversation.
thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Members, any other questions?
I have a question, not a question, but
Senator Favela, go ahead.
I don't know if it's a question. But anyway, I just wanted to do the same. Thank you again for coming and sharing. I don't know if anybody else besides me, with the rest of the senators, really like your energy, Tracy, and going forward, hope you can continue to bring that energy to the court, and that on both sides of the world, that you're going to be, a people person, and working with our community and trying to get a good balance, and worrying about, less incorporation and more rehabilitation. I think that's a real good idea. There's a lot of people that is in jail that probably just needed to be rehabilitated and probably would be great citizens today. And I know, for whatever reason, God gave us all second chances in the world to be better citizens. And whoever was in our lives to give us that, we're blessed to be there today. I just wanted to just say, because, you have a diverse of volunteerism and, serving the community and serving the people of Hawaii. That's something big and grounded that I think that you bring to the table. I was joking around with you about you working for the city, but, that's okay. But the part I like is that, you graduated from McKinley High School, right? And you're a townie, right? So you're going to bring that aspect.
Kailua High School.
What was that?
It was Kailua High School.
Yeah, Kailua High School. So you're going to be able to bring that windward spirit to the district court. You have a diverse background, so I think you're going to do great. I know Senator Jarrett never bring that up, but in that area of the Windward Town. But just thank you for coming and sharing your manao with me. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Members, any other questions? Thank you, Senator Favela. Okay, I do have a couple myself. So it would be hard not to be aware at this point of a number of murders of unarmed African Americans and indigenous people by police officers, and often the police officers have not been prosecuted for these acts. You mentioned in passing before that you have represented a police officer in the past and then also investigated police misconduct, is that correct?
I represented plaintiffs against police officers as well.
So, what's your feelings on the the limited immunity rule for police officers. Is that a good thing, or is that something we should consider getting rid of in the future or modifying?
Just for clarification, are you talking about qualified immunity on the federal level?
Qualified immunity is what I meant, I'm sorry.
So I do think that it has a necessary function as far as the officers are balancing. Their job is very difficult, so they're balancing extreme dangers that they face against, policing. And so I do think that the qualified immunity law serves a purpose. Whether it can be tweaked or not, yes. But as far as eliminating it altogether, I don't think that will serve the community as a whole. I think that in the end, officers, we don't want them hesitating when they need to react in very exigent circumstances. And if you eliminate it altogether, there might be that. And so does that give them free rein to just act unreasonably? No, it does not. But the qualified immunity law does not allow that either. So I do think it is necessary. But like I said, it can be, it's a concept created in the courts, the federal court systems. It is being, the extent of it is different in different jurisdictions. I do think that it can be modified, but eliminated, I don't think that's a good suggestion.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Fukui. We'll see.
Wait, I have a follow-up, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Keo Kalole. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you have, can you elaborate on that? Can you provide us some recommendations and in terms of some of the nuance you might be amenable to suggesting or recommending?
I don't think that, because I still am a corporation counsel, I think, and we have active litigation cases going on, I don't think that I don't feel entirely comfortable with it making suggested changes, because it could, they're basically based on what I've experienced as a corp counsel, and I have a duty of confidentiality and loyalty at this point while I'm still a corp counsel. And so to go into detail about what should be changed or what should not be changed, I don't think that is appropriate on the rules of professional conduct for me to comment on. But I do think that the defense itself is very fact specific. And what is clearly established law and what is not clearly established law is also fact specific. It depends on each situation. This is why I have some hesitation. Because it's so fact specific, and I still represent the city in cases where it comes down to those facts, is where I have a little bit of I have an issue with respect to my duties as an attorney. I apologize. I would like to answer, but I don't feel that it's appropriate under the rules.
Okay. Any other questions, members? If not, thank you so much for coming in, or for coming in virtually and testifying today, for giving us your story, and we'll move on to the next nominee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Judiciary Communication number 3. This is for Bryant Zane for confirmation to the District Court of the First Circuit for a term to expire in 6 years. The testimony for Mr. Zane starts with Aaron S.H.U. in support, Anna Ishikawa Jackson in support, Benjamin Rose in support, Brian Kim in support, Carol Lockwood in support, Catherine Lowenberg in support, Chastity Imamura in support, Chut Fu Lui in support, Crystal Glendon in support, Donovan Odo in support, Doris Lum in support, Doug Chen in support, Edward Aquino in support, Gilbert Chang in support, Harriet Jorgensen in support, Jackie Esser in support, Jamie Miyasato in support, Jarrett Jacinto in support, Jeffrey Sugu in support, Jody Yasuda in support, John Chow in support, Catherine Lukella in support, Kel Ide in support, Kelly Chun in support, Kenneth Nakasone in support, Kyle Dowd in support, Lee Hayakawa in support, Michelle Cordero Lee in support, Michelle Agsalda in support, Mitsuhiro Murakawa in support, Nicholas Monlux in support, Okichukwu Amadi in support, Paige Ogata in support, Pamela Hironaka in support, Scott Simon in support, Randy Leong in support, Reed Shiraki in support, Shannon Kaneko in support, Charlene Ganoza Lee in support, Stephanie Wan in support, Tanya Kakina Cabanero in support, Taran Tomasa in support, Timothy Ho in support, Tracy Fukui in support, Walter Rodby in support, Wayne Tashima in support, William Bagasol in support, James Tabi in support, Jennifer Ng in support, Kachusi Silander in support, Kyle Kawamoto in support, Rochelle Bedinha in support, Susan Arnett in support, Tricia Nakamura in support, and finally Gregory Fry from the Hawaii State Bar Association in support. Are you still here?
I am.
Fire away.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. In the time that we spent with Mr. Zane and got to know him and listened from those in support, you've just given a very long list, Mr. Chair. I'll tell you that he has done over 50 trials. This man has walked the walk and talked the talk. He is known as a brilliant writer and researcher. He represents people with the Office of Public Defender that, quite frankly, are literally at the most difficult stages of their lives, going through a system they do not know, they do not understand, and that they are quite afraid of. He will know, as a judge, how to deal with folks from our community who come up to need his help as the trier of fact. He understands local folks and how they need to be brought through a system effectively. These really exceptional talents, and quite frankly, and I say it genuinely, his endearing story about his famed bow ties persuaded our board without hesitation to designate Mr. Zane as qualified, and I let you know that again here. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Any questions for Mr. Fry? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Zane, if you'd like to make your opening statement.
Thank you. Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Ke'okalole, Senator Favela, Senator Kim, Senator Gabbard, aloha. My name is Bryant Zane. I've been appointed by Chief Justice Mark Rechtenwald to a district court judge position, but Chief Justice is intending to assign me to family court. I'd like to start with some thank yous. First, thank you to the senators for providing time for me during this process, and that includes Jessie Fage, who her organization was really helpful in this time. I'd like to thank Chief Justice Rechtenwald for appointing me, his staff, and Rod Miley from the Judiciary for their support and guidance of me. I'd like to thank the Hawaii State Bar Association, particularly Executive Director Pat Maoshimizu and President Greg Fry, as well as the Board of Directors, in their guidance and support in this process. I'd like to thank my employer, the Office of the Public Defender, that nurtured me from a young attorney to a seasoned attorney and has always been supportive of my endeavor to become a judge. And I'd like to thank all the people who wrote in support, as well as people who didn't write in. It's humbling and honoring and overwhelming. And most especially, I'd like to thank my biggest supporters, and that's my wife, Dr. Cindy Goodness Zane, my son, William Elisha Kaleokoa Hideyuki Zane, and my mother, Lillian Zane. And hopefully they're watching, barring any technical difficulties on their device. I wanted to start with a little background on me. I'm born and raised in Honolulu. I went to Iolani School. I graduated from UH Manoa. At Manoa, I fulfilled my language requirement by taking Hawaiian language, and Olelo Hawai'i has been important to me since. I went to law school at Howard University, which is a historically black university in Washington, D.C. Its most famous graduate is the former U.S. Supreme Court Associate Justice Thurgood Marshall. Two of the accomplishments that I'm most proud of during my time at Howard is that I was the president of the Public Interest Law Society in my second year. I was also a member of the Christian Fellowship Choir, which is a gospel choir where we wore robes and clapped and swayed as we sang. After law school, I was fortunate enough to be hired by retired Judge Ricky Amano in Hilo. We had a split calendar of criminal as well as civil cases. We also did some family court matters. She taught me probably the most of anybody about the profession of law, the responsibility that comes with it. She's still a mentor to me today. After my clerkship, I went on to work as a deputy prosecuting attorney at the office of the prosecuting attorney on Kauai. Michael Sung was the prosecutor, and for 2 years, Derek Chan was those two people are judges today. I decided to come home to Honolulu after 4.5 years, and I worked at the Office of the Public Defender. And at the Office of the Public Defender, I encountered brilliant legal minds in criminal law. I came across extremely talented trial attorneys that I one day aspired to be. And I'm hoping I got there. I believe I did. And after 5 years, I left. And the reason I left is my wife went back to school. She went back to school to become a psychologist. And when it came time to do her internship, she chose an internship at the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center. And so we went. And we went for 1 year. It was for 1 year. Obviously, I wasn't licensed in Oklahoma. And she gave me the okay to work a job that I really wanted to do. So I was able to fulfill a lifelong desire to work on a golf course in maintenance. I was an equipment operator. And fortuitously, in that time, right around New Year's, January 1st, 2008, I ran into Jack Tonaki, my boss at the Public Defender's Office in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl, and he encouraged me to apply again. And the timing worked out. I was hired back again, and it's been 12 plus years since, and which brings me here today. And I'm humbly asking the committee for their support in my confirmation. Mahalo.
Thank you. Members, questions?
Yes, I'm leading off again.
If you'd like to, go ahead, Senator Kim.
Somebody else can do so. I mean, I can certainly.
I don't mind, go ahead.
Okay,
You got
first of
the
all,
great
I
questions.
want to congratulate you for supporting your wife and allowing her to go away and be the supportive husband. Usually the wives are the ones that do that. So I congratulate you. Also, I am a golfer, used to be a golfer, so I can imagine how that might have been for you. I'm going to ask you again similar questions that I asked earlier. So is the district court your first choice? Is this where you really want to be, or is it just a stepping stone for circuit court or court of appeals?
Well, I'm the Chief Justice is intending me to place me in family court, actually. But, you know, and yes, I asked to be placed in family court. You know, family court is a place where life-changing decisions are made, and I want to be there. You know, I have I guess a personal interest. Like my son, who's 6 years old, he's adopted, and we went through the process, and so I know firsthand how it is to be a participant at the family court level. And you know, he was only 20 days old when he was placed in our arms, but it took until he was 2 years and 11 months before he was adopted. And, you know, part of it was our first attorney created some delays. Our second attorney straightened things out. But I'll never forget that feeling of being less than a legitimate parent, where we were probed in our home study, where it was difficult. It was a challenge to put him on my health care plan, where when I signed him up for preschool, you know, I signed him up as a guardian, even though in my heart I was his father. And, you know, his name wasn't even William at the time, but we registered him as William because that was our name for him. And so I'll never forget that. I'll never forget how long it took, the agony of it. You know, when we got to that day in court, Judge Browning presided, and, you know, I can imagine it wasn't a special case for Judge Browning. He's probably done thousands of family court cases over his long career in family court. But he made it important to us, and I really appreciate that, because it certainly mattered. This one case, our case, mattered to me and my family. And I'm always going to remember that, and if I'm so fortunate to be confirmed, I'm going to bring that to the bench.
Thank you for sharing that. I always believe that your experiences, your first-hand experience is certainly what shape you, and it'll determine the kind of judge you will be on the bench because of that. And, you know, we really need good family court judges, and we need a consistency there as well. We want to see that the judges, you know, we have judges that are committed to the court and working with the families, because I believe that family court is really one of the tougher areas. Well, all the district court, but especially family court, dealing with the lives of young children and the lives of parents. You know, whether you're adopting or divorcing or whatever you go through, it's a traumatic experience for a lot.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Or wanting to be a family court. So, good luck.
Thank you, Senator Kim.
Members, any other questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Senator Favela.
Again, it was a privilege and honor to talk to you, knowing your passion to serve in a family court. Same thing as my Senator Donna Mercado Kim said. I told you this in the office, that it takes a real man to make that sacrifice and go up there and support your wife. Not many men will probably step up to do that, and especially taking that trialing job that you had, cutting trees in the winter and the summer, and working that hard job just to support your beautiful habit of golfing and your passion. But what Senator was saying, what you were saying about having that diverse approach to family court judge, like I told you in the office, I think that's one of the best things that I think we were blessed with, having a person like you serving a family court, because you come from all sorts of background, and going through the process that you have to go through is not easy. You know, getting to, for the foster dad or try to be a dad or going through that process. And this is what I shared before, is that this process takes so long sometimes that it is trying on the person that you're trying to adopt and be part of your family, and on top of the couple or the person that's doing the adopting. So going forward, knowing that you have that both worlds and knowing what process it takes is going to give a great chance for families that either want to keep their children or families that want to adopt children will have hopefully a much easier time going forward. But again, thank you for being the person you are. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Favela.
Members, any other questions? I have a couple for you, Mr. Zane.
Yes.
So in family court, there's a calendar, I believe it's called special calendar, that includes Assisted Community Treatment Act, involuntary commitments, and I want to say guardianships are in there as well.
Yes.
You've probably heard some of the discussion we've had about defendants who, in the district court side, who have mental or substance abuse problems that are often the underlying problem that causes the criminal activity. Just wanted to get your thoughts on how guardianships, assisted community treatment, involuntary commitments, how they work together or not. Do you view them as a continuum, or do you view them as three separate processes? And just in general, how you intend to deal with cases at family court where mental illness or substance abuse is an issue?
Well, I think there are three different vehicles, but they're all they touch upon each other. When I was when I did the involuntary commitment hearings as a public defender, there was no ACT. So I think that kind of developed as a hybrid, because it seems that sometimes guardianships can take long and not accomplish the goal of getting people the oversight kind of help. And the involuntary commitments, that the standard was set really high in that you have to be imminently dangerous. So, and then, it goes along with hospitalization. And so the ACT was created, that's my understanding, to kind of fit in between the two, where it's a streamlined process. The standard is not so high, but it effectively addresses the big concern, which is not being medicated and living a life living within having your mental illness. And so my philosophy will be, whatever comes before me, I'll take a look at it. If it's appropriate, if it tracks the law, that's something I will follow.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Mr. Zane, for appearing before us. Members, we've been going for 2 hours now. It's 2:58. Let's take a 5-minute recess, come back at 3:03. 3:03 we'll resume.
Thank you. Thank you.
go ahead and resume. Let's see, can everybody hear me? Okay. Next up, we have Judiciary Communication number 4. This is Andrew Park for consideration and confirmation to the district. I'm sorry, before we get going again, just for those who haven't been watching from the beginning, this is the Judiciary Committee. This is the 1 o'clock agenda. We're going over 8 judges, 1 Intermediate Court of Appeals nominee, and 7 district and family court, district family court judges. And we are on the 5th judge, which is Judiciary Communication number 4 for Andrew T. Is Adrian Dakhwa in support, Afirak Bamrum Gruen in support, Benjamin Rose in support, Brian Kim in support, Carmel Kwok in support, Chastity Imamura in support, Crystal Glendon in support, Dawn Ching in support, Catherine Neste in support, Catherine Koga in support, Lauren Wilcoxon in support, Lori Tamanaha in support, Lynn Kashiwabara in support, Marissa Owens in support, May Nakamoto in support, Michelle Silva in support, Okichukwu Amadi in support, Paul LaCuesta in support, Selena Kanai in support, Tracy Black in support, Walter Rodby in support, Joel Kane in support, Mark Harada in support, Rich Stacy in support, Tricia Nakamura in support, and finally on our list is Gregory Fry with Hawaii State Bar Association, who is still here. Go ahead, Mr. Fry.
Thank you, sir, and thank you to the whole committee. Yes, I am still here. Just a few moments of your time, and again, with great appreciation. Judge Park is a per diem judge. Therefore, from a litigator's point of view, we view him as one who has already been at it and practiced and learned how to be a judge, that he now has been nominated for what we would call a full-time job. Litigators have evaluated through our vetting process with the Hawaii State Bar Association, have evaluated Judge Park in his abilities, his skills, his judicial temperament, and his talents. And he has received extremely high marks indeed. It's believed, and I know from personal experience in my own firm, that Judge Park really effectively pushes his cases along. But he does it not only efficiently and with streamlined effect, but he does it, and this is the key as we found, as we learned what people think, he does it where the litigants, the parties involved, truly feel, those that come before him, that they have been heard, that they have been listened to, that they have been respected. Quite frankly, given the volume of work that district court judges, and particularly, you heard Mr. Zane say it, Senator Mikado Kim say it, and others, particularly family court, where it is volumes of distressing work. It's a rare talent for a district court judge who is overworked and under-resourced to display such effective patience and concern. He has been a great per diem judge, and we, as the Hawaii State Bar Association Board, qualified him and marked him as qualified because we believe he's going to make a fantastic full-time judge.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Members, any questions for Mr. Fry? Okay, seeing none. Judge Park, if you'd like to make your opening statement.
Thank you, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Keoho Kalole, committee members, Senator Kim, Gabbard, and Favela. I thank you for the time in your consideration of each of us in the days leading up to today, and as well as in this hearing. And I thank you for the time. I did have the fortune to meet with several of you during this busy period. I'm humbled and honored to be in this position where I am up for consideration and confirmation, and I would not have been able to be in this position were it not for my family and friends. I would like to express my gratitude my father, who's watching from Mililani, my mother, who probably isn't watching, from Mobile, Alabama, my brothers in Kaimuki and Nanakuli, and especially my wife, who herself is a practicing attorney and is watching this live stream. Our young son is not watching this live stream because of its lack of dinosaurs or construction vehicles, but it's truly an honor to be in this position. A little bit about me, I touched on my family, and it wasn't until I was a little older that I realized that my family was, a blended family. My two big brothers are my half brothers. We have a different father. And I didn't even really think about that until maybe I was in high school. I would see my father. My parents got divorced when I was in between the 3rd and 4th grade, and I grew up in Mililani and Wahiawa. And it wasn't until I was assigned to the family court as a per diem judge that I really understood, what like a visitation schedule was. I was reviewing some stipulations, and I said, one dinner visitation during the week and, a day on Saturday, and hey, that sounds really familiar. I didn't think anything of it, but that was kind of the life that I grew up, and it was good for me. And my parents, they got along great even after having gotten divorced. And the time that I've spent at the family court, as Mr. Fry had indicated, I've been able to see a lot of cases, and I've been able to consider everyone's particular situation and to assist them in whatever capacity that I can. I began my legal career at the prosecutor's office, where I started out as an intern. After I passed the bar exam, I got sworn in, and I was a deputy prosecutor there for a number of years. And then I left to go into private practice, and it's a great job. I love it. I love to get to help people. There's few things that I can think of being more of an honor in our profession than when someone calls you up or comes into your office and asks you if you can help them. And I've been able to help, I hope, a lot of people. And since 2017, when I was appointed as a per diem judge to the district family court, which is my understanding as to where the Chief Justice would intend to designate me if I were confirmed, I've been able to help more people. And I would be very honored to have the opportunity to continue my career there and conclude my career there if the Senate would confirm me. And I appreciate your time, and I welcome any questions that any of you may have.
Thank you. Members, any questions? You don't have to go first, Donna.
I'm sorry?
You don't have to go first. Somebody else can
Somebody else can go first, yes. But nobody steps up to the plate.
All right, I'll go. I don't have too much of a question. More of mine is that.
Go ahead, Senator Favela.
Yeah, it was a great honor too. I mean, we talked about a lot of your diverse background and growing up. Like you said, if you have an opportunity to serve as a family court judge, if that's what happens, I think you do great because of your diverse background and growing up. Wahiawa, Mililani, beautiful place, yeah, rainy and whatnot, and it's a great place to live. But like you said, you started off late. But I think you're still very young to me, and I think it's a real pleasure to see that we're going to have great family court judges going forward in the system, because that's what we need in Hawaii now. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't have that now, but we need more people to be able to relate to what the circumstances that are going now in our world and be able to diverse your knowledge going forward in helping our people of Hawaii. So, like I said, when I had the meeting with you in my office, it was awesome. It was a breath of fresh air, and we shared a lot, me and you, and I congratulate you, and I wish you the best going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator Favela.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? I will go, I have a couple, so similar to what I asked Mr. Zane, at family court there's a calendar called special calendar that includes assisted community treatment, involuntary commitments, and I think guardianships and maybe other stuff, I don't know. In terms of dealing with people in family court who have mental illnesses that either they're unable to make their own medical decisions, or they're a danger to themselves or others, which is the case with ACT and involuntary commitment. How do you view those three? Do you view them as separate legal processes, unrelated to each other, or is it a continuum? And I guess in general, what are your feelings about how to handle cases where the mental illness or substance abuse is an issue?
Thank you. I'll start with the final part of your question with regards to how to handle cases where mental health or substance abuse is an issue. If it's an issue to the extent that there's a question as to whether or not a participant is able to meaningfully participate in the process because of their mental health or substance abuse issue, then I think that would call for a particular course of action. Maybe get that person compulsory treatment, or appoint them maybe a guardian ad litem. If it's to the point where they can't act in their own best interest, and if they're a party to that case. With regards to subjects on the court calendar, whether or not a person may be a subject as to a guardianship petition, a petition relating to assisted community treatment, or to involuntary hospitalization, I view them as three different tools that work in a continuum, depending on the type of a need that the individual has, as you had referenced, Chair Rhodes, in terms of, is that person a danger to themselves or others, or is it just the case that the individual is unable to make decisions on their own behalf and take their medicine on their own? And so I think that I view them as a continuum. I have not yet been able to preside over an ACT trial. I have presided over numerous involuntary hospitalization hearings, as well as guardianship hearings. And although I've not presided over any ACT contested hearings yet, I would have no problem with granting that if the respective burdens were met.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions?
Yes, I don't want,
Okay, go ahead.
I don't want Andrew to feel like I'm not asking him any questions that I asked the others, so I will also ask you, is this your first choice, being in the district court, family court?
The district and district family court are the only positions that I have ever applied for. I started to apply for them after I had been appointed as a per diem judge in the district family court, and I had found that I really do enjoy the work there. And the district family court, where the Chief Justice would intend to designate me, is right now where my passion lies.
So you're committing to the 6 years that we're appointing you for?
Yes, I think if I'm lucky enough to be confirmed, I should have a amount of years of service eligibility so that I can fill out the term of 6 years at the district family court.
Can I ask, do you have children?
I have one young son.
I always, not that I discriminate against people with no children, but I think you do have children, you tend to look at things a little bit differently. And so being on the family court, having a child, I think also gives you that perspective. So appreciate that. And you appear to me to be, that you're going to be a compassionate judge, which I think is needed in the family court, but also one that can also look at things objectively and do what is best interest of the child and the family. I hope that you will be in the family court. I think we have some excellent appointees this time around. So thank you very much for your willingness.
Thank you, Senator Kim.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, I do have one final question about, so the Judiciary Communication says for consideration and confirmation of the District Court of the First Circuit, but you've already talked to CJ about the plan is to go to family court, just continue at family court only.
That would be the plan. That's correct, Chair.
Okay. All right. I was just curious why, because some of the other nominees, they actually say district family court, but you don't, but it looks like you're going there anyway. So, okay. Just curious. All right. Members, any other questions? If not, thank you so much, Judge Park, and we will move on to the next nominee. And that nominee is, this is JC number 5, Courtney Nasso, for a district family court term that will expire in 6 years. For Ms. Nasso, the first up is the testifying her support is Afarak Bamrungruen in support, Condra Rivers in support, Douglas Crozier in support, Hawaii Women Lawyers support, Jeffrey Sia in support, Jennifer Harada Okino in support, Ligaya Stice in support, Maureen King in support, May Nakamoto in support, Michelle Moorhead in support, Robin Hartman in support, Ron Shiira in support, Rosalind Loomis in support, Steve Rochman in support, Eric England in support, Scott Arakaki in support, Stephen Kim in support, and Gregory Fry with the Hawaii State Bar Association in support. And if you're still here, go ahead.
I am still here, and thank you very much for the time. Often in family court, as tough as the job is for a judge, the judges come to the bench there either at a per diem position or a full-time position without any courtroom, I'm busy, sorry about that, any courtroom experience at all as a litigator, no experience in family court or understanding the substantive law. That's not to say they don't turn out through experience and hard work to be good judges. But in this case, with regard to Ms. Nasso, that is not true. It is as far from the truth as it could probably be. I say with confidence, having spent my entire career only in family court and family law matters, that she is at the core extremely reasonable and probably the finest compliment anybody could give a family law practitioner of note. She has a big picture view and motivation. She's going to take all of these talents away from decades working as a litigator in family court to the bench. And I say, and our association and our board says, that it will be the people and the children of Hawaii who come to the family court for help who are going to be the true beneficiaries of her appointment, should she be. We as a board absolutely did qualify her and designate her as such.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fry. Any questions for Mr. Fry? If not, Ms. Nasso, if you would like to make your opening statement.
Yes, thank you so much. Aloha and good afternoon, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Keohokalole, the Senate committee members, Senator Kim, Senator Favela, Senator Gabbard, and other distinguished attendees to this hearing. I'm really honored, I'm very excited, and really truly humbled by Chief Justice Rechtenwald's appointment to the family court. I appreciate the great amount of time that many individuals have spent on this process, beginning with the Judicial Selection Commission, moving on to the Chief Justice, the Hawaii State Bar Association, now the Senate. And I'd really like to extend my gratitude and thanks to all of those who submitted letters and testimony in my support. I spent a lot of time doing homework. I would practice piano about 1 to 2 hours every day. And I certainly enjoyed sailing regularly on Kaneohe Bay. So I'm a true windward country girl. My parents instilled in me the values of honesty, integrity, persistence, and a good work ethic. My parents really sacrificed so much for me. While my dad was active duty in the U.S. Navy, he would work 1 or 2 extra jobs in the evening. And my mom, who's a piano teacher, would take on extra students, upwards of 75 students per week. And they did that to give me various opportunities, academically, extracurricular activities. And to them, I am so grateful for their support and their sacrifice. I just want to say thanks, Mom and Dad. I'm married to my best friend, Paul, of 15 years, and we have a really vivacious and talented 12-year-old daughter named Zoe. She's in the 7th grade at Hawai'i Baptist Academy. I don't think she's watching right now because she's probably still on her way home from school, but I know my husband is watching somewhere, so he's my greatest supporter. Thank you. I appreciate you, Paul. So the same day that I received the information and the news from the Chief Justice about this appointment on September 11th, Patriots Day, was the same day that Zoe performed Bumble Boogie in her school's virtual talent show and was voted the winner by her peers. So you could say it was a really good day in the Nassau household that day. It was really exciting. We value our family time together, and we make it a priority to have family dinners with my parents every weekend. Moving on to my legal experience, I've been practicing law for 20 years, both in California, where I started, and the last 14 years in Hawaii, when I moved back home. 18 of those 20 years has been primarily focused on family law. I've really enjoyed the last 14 years learning from and working with my boss colleague, Stephen Kim. That's kind of a word that I created because he winces when I call him my boss, so he's my boss colleague. I consider in my practice of family law that it's my responsibility, it's my duty and my privilege to help individuals and families as they navigate the treacherous waters and difficulties of the emotional cases that come through family court. In addition to advocacy and building a case strategy for my client, I always approach each case and each client with compassion, empathy, and integrity. And I keep saying that word because I do believe that integrity is of the utmost importance as an attorney, and even more so as a judge who is serving our community. I applied to the family court because I care about family court. I care about the families that are passing through the family court. I've spent almost my entire legal career doing family law, so I think it's safe to say that I have an extreme passion for family law. And I wouldn't have stayed in it this long if I didn't truly want to help people through some of the most difficult times in their lives. I view family court similarly to how people refer to the district court, as a people's court. These are the courts where I see the vast majority of our community is going to have their initial opportunity to interface with the judiciary. What's most important is I want to serve our Hawaii families. I want to uphold the law with firmness and fairness and compassion, and treat every individual and family that comes through my courtroom, if I'm confirmed, treat them with dignity. The parties and the families that come through family court are coming for help. They need our help. They need to walk away with a feeling that they've been heard and that they have been treated with dignity. I've shared this with some of the senators that I've met with. A quote that inspires me is by Maya Angelou, where she says, "I've learned that people will often forget what you've said, and they'll often forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel." When individuals are at their worst versions of themselves, which is where we find them in family court, they are deserving of the court's individual, undivided, and impartial attention. Through the years, I've had wonderful opportunities and I've been committed to serve by volunteering and serving families and children through various organizations. And although it's sad to me that I will have to step down from a number of those volunteer opportunities if I am confirmed as a family court judge, what's exciting is that it opens up opportunities for me to serve on committees that are designed and focused on helping to improve the family court and our judiciary as a whole. So at this time, Senators, I would like to thank you for taking your time to meet with me. For those of you who have done so, and I still have some more that I would like to be meeting with, I'd like to ask you that I appreciate your consideration and I humbly ask for your support as I endeavor in this position as a family court judge, and I welcome any questions at this time, even if Senator Kim is the first question.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Well, if no one else has anything at the moment, I'll go ahead and basically the question is similar. I guess you've probably heard what I was asking other family court judge, people who are expecting to end up in family court. The assisted community treatment, involuntary commitment, guardianship are on a special calendar, and just want your thoughts on how they fit together, if they do, and how, in general, how you will deal with cases where there's substance abuse or mental illness would appear to be issues in play.
Thank you for that question, Chair Rhodes. Yes, the special division, among other things, does cover those issues that you've just talked about. I view them as all working together, as the similarity is that they are all designed to protect the individual, protect them from themselves, provide safeguards if they are unable to reside in the community or in their household without some type of supervision or extra care. So they all bear that similarity. They have different levels of intensity, where guardianship seems to be on the lower end of the spectrum, in that, you know, many times it's a parent that is seeking to be a guardian of their now 18 or 19-year-old child, or, you know, because they can't care for themselves for some reason or another. Obviously, it increases in intensity with the involuntary hospitalization and the ACT cases. So our goal should be to decriminalize mental illness. I view the court as a partner in getting the help that these individuals need to make them, you know, better able to survive and thrive in the community, not be a danger to themselves or others.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions? Senator Kim.
I'm going to surprise you. I don't really have a question. I just want to say that I appreciate your remarks. I pretty much gleaned from your remarks that family court is your priority and where you want to be. And from what was testified on your behalf, I believe that you will make a good family court judge. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Kim. I appreciate your comments.
I have one.
Senator Favela.
Well, usually never one, but like I discussed and talked to you when you came to my office. You know, with just everything that we talked about, especially with our trying to protect our kids and our children, and you know the legacy that you're setting forward for you know, Hawai'i Baptist Academy, right? We talked about that growing up and going to Hawai'i Baptist Academy, stuff like the Stellar House, those things. That is very important to people know how important that we need to protect our kids. Yeah, sex trafficking is a problem in Hawaii, and it's always overlooked because it usually is a family member or somebody that they know. You know, going forward, what kind of awareness you think that you can bring, because we talked about that before, to the family courts when it comes to sex trafficking?
Thank you for that question, Senator Favela, and I also enjoyed my time meeting with you and discussing not just personal and family matters, but also some really integral and important issues that are plaguing our state and our communities, and one of those is sex trafficking. You know, I think the best way, if I am confirmed as a judge, the best way for me to help is to serve on committees that can address that exact issue, whether it's increasing education through the community, through the schools. I think we have to just target at the earliest stage that you can reach kids where they can have an understanding about what sex trafficking is, and that probably is going to be through education, through media, and through the schools primarily.
I totally agree. Thank you very much for your time, and good luck.
Thank you, Senator Favela.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions for Ms. Nasso on Judiciary Communication number 5? I guess not. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for waiting for so long, and we'll see you on Monday.
Great. Thank you for your time, Senator. I appreciate it.
Okay, we will move on now to Judiciary Communication number 6, Elizabeth Pike Harris, for a district family court position that will expire in 6 years. This is a First Circuit on Oahu, as the other ones have been as well. The testimony for Ms. Pike Harris starts with Alan Kaneshiro in support, Althea Redman in support, Allison Kumik in support, Andrew Daisuke Stewart in support, Anna Lee in support, Afirik Baumbrungruen in support, Clayton Kamita in support, Crystal Glendon in support, Dale Lee in support, Dawn Ching in support, Derek Kobayashi in support, Elizabeth Kamita in support, Elsa McGahee in support, Aaron Kobayashi in support, Gary Sloan in support, Gavin Doi in support, Why Women Lawyers in support, Huilin Dong in support, Jennifer Shimabuku in support, Jim Honig in support, Joan Ukishima in support, John Schmidtke Jr. in support, Leanne Ebesugawa in support, Lynn Toyofuku in support, Mari Kishimoto Doi in support, May Nakamoto in support, Michelle Moorhead in support, Rosalind Loomis in support, Shelby Ferrer in support, Soledad Dela Cruz Ferrer in support, Stephen Gutman in support, former Judge Stephen Alm in support, Wendy Ishibashi in support, and Mr. Gregory Fry with the Hawaii State Bar Association. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I appreciate again the time and each moments that you've given me. As I opined, I think, with great passion and conviction about Ms. Nasso, every word I said about her applies to Ms. Peck Harris. Beyond those great skills and great reputation, she has been known for years, and I mean well known, as one of family law and family law section's best and most gifted scholars. Her research and writing skills are literally at the highest level. Her ability to reason and to work through complexity is probably better than all of us that do this full time. She is also, quite frankly, a great communicator and a real people's person. She sits as a per diem judge now, and as I've said about others before her today, she has gotten the practice, she has earned the respect. Everything that we got by way of our vetting process at the Hawaii State Bar Association indicated that, and for those reasons, and quite frankly many more, we deem her qualified and pass that on to you today.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for Mr. Fry for Ms. Pike Harris? Hearing none, Ms. Pike Harris, please go ahead with your opening statement.
Hi, Chair Rhodes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I'm sorry, Judge. Go ahead, please. Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Ke'oho Kalole, Senator Gabbard, Senator Kim, and Senator Favela. I'd like to thank the following people for their faith and confidence in me: Chair Ronnie Kawakami and the Judicial Selection Commission, Chief Justice Mark Rechtenwald, Chief Judge Mark Browning, Senior Family Court Judge Christine Kuriyama, former Senior Family Court Judge Kathy Remigio, as well as Francis Wong, and also the HSBA. Thank you to Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Ke'oho Kalole, and the Senate Judiciary Committee for taking the time to be so thorough in reviewing my application. Thank you to all the senators who met with me to get to know me as part of this process. And last but not least, I want to thank all of my friends and family and those who wrote in. They all know who they are, and I could not have made it this far without their love and support. I want to use this opportunity to touch on a few points that are not reflected in my application. I'm born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii. Like my colleague, Courtney, I'm also the product of both the public and the private school system. Ultimately, I'm a proud graduate of McKinley High School, and I'm very grateful for my experience growing up because it exposed me to a broad spectrum of children and families from all different socioeconomic backgrounds. I had friends who lived at the top of Hawaii Lower Ridge, and I had friends who lived in Mayor Rights housing. Observing the differences in these family dynamics is what sparked my interest in family law. I went away to college in the mainland because I wanted to experience the mainland, but I always knew that I wanted to come back home to Hawaii to live my life. After graduating from the William S. Richardson School of Law, I had three main goals. I wanted to be the best family law attorney I could be. I wanted to give back to the community through public service and pro bono work. And I also wanted to work with the family court to help improve the system. And for 15 years of my legal career, that's essentially what I stayed laser focused on, was those three goals. What changed is that about 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with early stage breast cancer. I was staged at 1A, right above stage 0. And so I was very, very lucky to have caught it early. It had not spread. But it was a life-changing experience for me and for my entire family. We all together made changes to our lifestyle, focusing more on our health and our diet and exercise. And naturally, I also started reevaluating my career. I reached out to colleagues and mentors to talk about their career path and asked what they may see in me, and a seed was planted in my mind to pursue a per diem family court judgeship. So I applied in July 2018. Chief Justice Rechtenwald gave me a chance and appointed me. Because my law practice was 100% family law, I had to leave my entire practice behind. And while I had some insecurities initially entering the bench, I was pleasantly surprised to discover that from the outset, I had never felt more comfortable in my shoes. All of my training in 15 years in family law, in mediation, doing pro bono work for pro se parties, my leadership roles as chair of the HSBA's family law section and child law section, all the policy work I did serving on numerous family court committees, all of it just all came together. And I found that my skills and knowledge that I developed as a family law attorney, it helped me to be a good family court judge and to feel confident in that role. I also found that several guiding principles I embraced as a family law attorney still held true for me as a family court judge, and that would be preparation, respect, and listening, making people feel heard. Over the year and a half serving as a per diem family court judge, I received positive feedback from my peers, my staff, my colleagues, and slowly I gained the confidence to apply for this full-time position, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to seek the support of this committee in my appointment. I'm here to assure this committee that my guiding principles I embraced as a family law attorney will remain the same as a family court judge. And my goals after graduating from law school also remain the same, just slightly changed. I want to be the best family court judge that I can be. I want to continue to give back to the community through public service. And I also want to continue to help improve the system at family court. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions?
Okay,
Yes, Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Senator Gabbard.
Sorry, Senator Gabbard, go ahead.
Go ahead.
And followed by Senator Favela.
Thank you, Senator Favela, for honoring the kupuna. Judge, I have a question. I see on your resume that you worked for Representative Roy Takumi during the 1998 session. Is that correct?
That's correct, Senator.
And did you have any desire to run as a representative or get into the legislative branch rather than getting into the judiciary?
I never aspired to be a judge, Senator. Again, that kind of just happened 3 years ago when I had that life-changing experience. I would have been open to becoming a lawmaker like yourself, but at the time, I wanted to work at the legislature back in 1998 because I was planning to go to law school. I was aspiring to be an attorney at that time. And I wanted to learn more about the legislative process, particularly here in Hawaii. And that really was my sole purpose of accepting that job to work for Representative Takumi at that time.
Okay. And you had a good experience?
I had a wonderful experience. It wasn't quite what I expected. I was assigned to be the legislative aide, and the work that I was focused on was acting as a community liaison. And, I kind of thought I would be reviewing bills and drafting bills. But what I really appreciated about that experience is it really was this sort of grassroots experience of working directly with the community, going to neighborhood board meetings, hearing from the people directly, and I really enjoyed that, Senator.
You were on the front lines, in other words.
Yeah, yes, very much so.
Thank you very much, Judge. Thank you for stepping forward for our state.
Thank you, Senator.
Aloha.
Senator Favela.
Hi, Judge. Again, just want to thank you for taking the time and visiting with my office. I learned a lot about you in that short period of time, and it makes me so excited for you moving forward into your career and your job choice that you're choosing now. It's a total godsend in what you're going forward. Knowing that, you have that passion, you have, humble beginnings. Thank you for sharing that with me about your mom and how, you went to private school and public school. And, I know a lot of the other senators, I don't know if you ever shared them with this, but I'm going to share this because it really touched my heart on how much of a go-getter and a steadfast hard worker and studier that you did when your mom used to work at the kiosk, right? She had her own kiosk. And knowing that you would go underneath the kiosk to do study work and do your homework from there. And having a diverse background and going to public and private school like you shared earlier. And then sharing with me a little bit about your daughter that's going to be going to preschool. These are the things that makes a well-rounded person. And it makes me feel so good to be part of this process and having such great people that's going to be, possible serving at our family court judge. So going forward, knowing that you have this diverse background, graduating from McKinley High School, going forward, and when you do become a family court judge, I know I shared this earlier, but when we come to fostering and child abuse cases in Hawaii, what makes it different for you as other judges, probably before you, in making good decisions for our people?
Thank you for that question, Senator Favela. You know, that foster care calendar, the termination of parental rights calendar, is what I view as one of the most challenging calendars. I think when you talk to a lot of seasoned family court judges, they say the divorce calendar is the most challenging. I think for me, having practiced divorce for 15 years, I've learned how to compartmentalize my emotions and to view the facts objectively and rationally as possible. And so I've been trained in that area. The first time I ever observed the foster care calendar in court after being appointed as a per diem family court judge, I remember having to leave the courtroom several times because the facts were so emotional. And I would get teary-eyed and I would need to step out of the courtroom. And but, you know, I think that the emotion is important to have as a judge, but at the same time, it didn't take me very long to collect myself and to realize and recognize that we had a very, very big responsibility to look after these kids and to do what is in their best interest. And, you know, if anyone's going to do it, I'll do it. I'll be the one to step up to do it. And having that responsibility is a big honor. And so I would say that, you know, that calendar is certainly most challenging, Senator.
I don't thank you for that, but, you know, a lot of people out there needs to know that you judges are human too. Thank you guys very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to add,
Senator Kim.
yes, Judge, I appreciate, again, you're also willing to step up. Being a graduate of the public school system, I think is also important, the perspective that it lends for you, and going away to school, I think is something that also gives you that well-roundedness to be able to serve. Serving on the legislature also helps to see how sometimes we as legislators look at the community and the grassroots in shaping some of our questions and the legislation that we pursue. So thank you very much for your willingness to step up and serve in family court.
Thank you, Senators.
Members, any other questions? If not, I do have a couple. You've heard I believe you've heard what I've asked previous family court judges or nominees that were probably headed for the family court. Your thoughts on assisted community treatment, involuntary commitments, and guardianships, how it all fits together, if it does, and you know, what the purposes of it are, and also just in general, how do you deal now with cases that are where mental illness or substance abuse are at issue?
Yeah, you know, to be honest with you, Senator, the ACT is very new to the family court right now, and I've not been able to sit on that calendar yet. I have sat on the involuntary hospitalization calendar. In fact, my very first day as a per diem judge was on that very calendar. I've sat on it a handful of times. And it is also an extremely challenging calendar to sit on. But, you know, and so I guess in answer to your question, I have not had the pleasure of seeing how these three different areas, ACT, involuntary, and also guardianship, I've not seen how they all will work together. I think the goal is to make them work together seamlessly. But I just have to be honest in answering your question that I'm not exactly sure how it will work. What I can share with you is that my job as a judge is to uphold and apply the law. And that's what I will do. my very first time sitting on the involuntary hospitalization calendar, I was faced with facts and circumstances that I felt justified a denial of the petition. And it came down to the expert who was testifying, because as judges, we are relying on the experts that testify, and we also have to assess their credibility as well. And, you know, there are some judges who in their entire career have never, denied a petition. But that day I was faced with specific facts and circumstances that in my mind justified a denial. And so I did what I believed was right, and I applied the law to the facts. I don't know if that answers your question, Senator, but I think essentially it remains to be seen how these three calendars are going to work together because ACT is so new. But it is certainly something that for me as a judge, I will be looking out for, you know, how these three calendars can work together and should work together, Senator.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know how new it actually is. I mean, we passed the law in 2013 or 14. There haven't been, it's new in the sense, I suppose, that you don't have a high volume of them going through, and so not many people have much experience with them. Does the family court, when you either deny a petition for involuntary commitment or approve it, does the person remain under family court jurisdiction? I suppose if you commit them, they're still under family court jurisdiction, but if you deny the petition, then it's not anymore?
That's correct.
So do you ever hear what happens after you denied a petition? There's no follow-up? There's no systematic follow-up?
Not that I know of, Senator, unless that subject came back into the system again.
Okay. Because I don't envy you having to make those kind of decisions, because you're probably aware of this case up in Kauai a few years ago where the judge denied the petition for involuntary hospitalization. Sorry, thank you. And it's a long story, but to make it short, the next day the guy went out and stabbed one of his neighbors to death, attacked his grandfather, slashed him, attacked another neighbor with a large kitchen knife, and didn't respond to the police at all, and the police shot him dead. So as you're aware, the stakes are very high, and I don't envy you. I mean, you have to follow I concur completely. You have to follow the law and do what's in your best judgment, but those cases can be very high stakes. Members, any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Judge Pike Harris.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the last nominee for the day. That is Thomas Hawai'i. He is being considered for District Family Court of the First Circuit, which of course is Oahu, for a term to expire in 6 years. It's Judiciary Communication number 7. The testimony, first up on the testifier list, is Courtney Lee Haya, who apparently is here. Are you here, Courtney? Anybody know whether she's... I don't see her. Well, if she comes back, we'll hook her into the remote and have her testify. Adrian Olsch, also, both these were in support, and Adrian Olsch was also planning to testify in person, remotely here. And I'm looking for the name, and I don't see them. Okay, we'll go on to the other one. If they come in later, we'll have them testify. Okay. Next is Benjamin Rose in support, Brian Kim in support, Cody Lynn Puamana Haya in support. Crystal Glendon in support, Eric Gavik in support, Eric Tanaka in support. Oh, my video's off. I'm sorry. How did I turn? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to turn my video off. I must have hit something accidentally. Eric Tanaka in support, Faye Kimura in support, Lauren Walker, Hawaii Friends of Restorative Justice in support, Marilyn Yamamoto in opposition, May Nakamoto in support, Michelle Moorhead in support, Rebecca Lester in support, Simeona Mariano in support, Tammy DuPont in support, Walter Rodby in support, and Gregory Fry, Hawaii State Bar Association.
Thank you, Senator. My last time up, I appreciate every opportunity this entire committee has given. It means everything to me personally and to our association. As described in our vetting process with Judge Haya as a per diem judge, he is in the trenches, years of experience in family court as a practitioner, as a guardian ad litem, as a custody evaluator, as a party litigant himself. He is a product, a true product of Hawaii's spirit, of its pride and its tradition. He is totally committed to the family court, but he is also equally committed in his current per diem judgeship in district court proper. He is a true local boy made good from the slopes of Kalai Puhaku. He was 2 years before me. I have personally known him for over 40 years. Everything that was reported about this man to our association and to our board was favorable. Every experience that he will tell you about, which was described by him to us and by the written materials as quite non-traditional, will make him a very good judge. We designate him qualified and bring that to you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fry, for hanging with us for so long. Members, any questions for Mr. Fry? If not, Judge Haya, would you like to go ahead and make an opening statement?
Thank you. Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Keoho Kalole, Judiciary Committee members, I want to thank you for this opportunity to meet with the committee today and to address the committee. I also want to take a moment to thank HSBA President and fellow St. Louis alumnus P. Gregory Fry for his kind words. I'd like to also acknowledge community members who have submitted testimony, including my daughters, my wife Tammy, our children, and my siblings who are watching this through the live webcast. Growing up, I grew up in a large family. I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers, and our parents worked extremely hard because they stressed education. They wanted us to have a good education. They also wanted us to understand that the community that gave to us, we owe a responsibility to give back to. And so I've kind of tried to stay focused on those 2 things, education and community service. Throughout my years with my kids growing up, I volunteered at their public schools. I also coached organized sports with the children, and currently I'm an active member in the Lions Club. Clearly you can see I'm somewhat older than most of the other people that your committee has met with today. I had a non-traditional move into law. I had an entire different career in tourism prior to getting into the law. I had always wanted to be a lawyer. I have an uncle who was a lawyer on Kauai who then became a judge on Kauai, and I'd always admired him and wanted to work to become a judge, a lawyer and a judge. When our kids were old enough that we didn't have to pay for babysitters and for preschool, I decided to go into law school. We could afford it at that point in time. Throughout my legal career, A large percentage of my cases, as the senators that I've met with know, has been devoted to working with families who are the vulnerable populations in Hawaii. Those that are homeless or houselessness, dealing with houselessness, those who are dealing with substance use and abuse issues, and also those with mental health concerns. I've realized substantial enjoyment from helping these families navigate the child welfare protection system, the Child Protective Act. And I've gotten tremendous enjoyment out of watching these families grow and become healthier when they successfully navigate that system. My work as a per diem judge, which I've been doing for about 6 years now, has also given me the opportunity to work with many different people in the community. I find the work extremely rewarding and enjoyable. I'm honored and humbled by the Chief Justice's nomination to serve the judiciary and our community in the District Family Court. If the committee votes to recommend my confirmation, and if I am confirmed, I'll strive to meet the confidence the Chief Justice has placed in me. I look forward to working full-time as a district court judge and to helping the members of our community navigate our judicial system. I humbly ask for your support, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Members, questions?
If you don't mind.
Senator Favela, go ahead.
Yeah. Again, Judge, thank you for taking the time to meet with me and got to share a lot of words, a lot of feelings. Most of all, going forward in just having that compassion to serve and, just with our families that is, like you said, houseless, our families and our kids that is in foster care. Just some of the things that I shared with you going forward, what kind of things that you could do going forward that would make the process, if there was a process, to be easier for people that want to have chance to not only be foster parents, but if there is a predicament to the point that they need somebody to take the child, what process do you think that you could do or help us do in making it easy for people to go through that process?
So thank you, Senator Favela. I know I enjoyed the conversation that we had in your office a couple of days ago as well. And I understand your concern about the foster care system and how difficult and challenging it can be to be a foster parent. As a judge, I, again, am going to be appointed by the Chief Justice to the Family Court, but I'm going to be sitting downtown or in the rural courts and district court. As a judge, I don't know that I can influence anything with respect to what we discussed the other day in your chambers. But I will assure you that if there are committees that I can sit on, or if there are individuals that I can discuss this with, I'd be happy to do so in my individual capacity. I just want what's best for our families, and it was unfortunate and heartbreaking to hear the information that you shared with me in your office the other day, because I don't believe that necessarily supports our families or helps our families to heal. And I think that that's something that we as a community need to strive for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Favela. Any other questions? If not, I do have a couple myself. So I think you indicated that you were expecting to be assigned to the district court, even though you'd applied for the family court. Is that correct?
That is accurate, Senator.
Okay. But you're okay with that?
Absolutely. I'll do what I can do to serve the judiciary and the Chief Justice.
Okay. So in district court, and you're already a judge there, how do you deal and this is going back to questions I asked before for district court judges. When you get a case where somebody, I mean, I understand you should be deciding the specific charge on the facts of that case, but at the sentencing stage, how do you deal with individual defendants who have multiple similar, relatively minor convictions, but there's an obvious pattern?
Right. So again, I think that you really need to look at the root cause of the reason why that individual has been in front of you several times, or perhaps the same thing. And oftentimes that root cause is lack of a support system, the inability to obtain services that are required to address an underlying mental health concern, or underlying substance use or substance abuse issue. And so I understand your question is, what would I do about sentencing? And with respect to sentencing, I follow the law. The law says what the law says with respect to sentencing. But I think that as a community, if we can address the underlying issues that are there, and I understand that you're a representative from Chinatown. You represent that district, and I'm sure that district struggles with, I see it on the news almost every night, with the chronic existence of houselessness and crimes that occur in that area. But again, I think that as a community we need to look at the root cause of what's bringing them back to court, and not necessarily punishing them. I don't know that sending someone to jail is going to actually rehabilitate them. I think that if we look at the cause, the underlying cause for the condition or the reason why that individual is in front of me several times, that makes more sense to address that than to try and put them in jail for a few days.
Do you think you have the necessary tools available right now to do anything other than sentencing them to time in prison and time in jail?
Depending upon what it is, I think that there is room for improvement in our community with respect to issues like houselessness and financial difficulty, especially amid this pandemic that we're dealing with right now. And I think, and also substance use. I think that we need to focus more on the availability of those services in the community. As you're aware, Senator, I represent parents, indigent parents in CPS cases, and oftentimes these are the exact issues that I'm dealing with, in representing my clients. And so I really think that as a community we need to address those issues.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Senator Kim, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge. Again, as I asked some of the other judges, is this your position to serve on the family court or the district court for the appointed time of 6 years, or did you rather serve on another court?
Thank you, Senator. So, Senator, I have enough time to serve one term as a district court judge because there's a mandatory retirement age, and although I can serve a partial second term, I wouldn't be able to serve a complete second term. For example, as we sit here today, I would not be able to do a complete 10-year term as a circuit court judge.
Well, you look like you can.
Well, thank you. My desire is to help the community, and the community, I think, is best served at this area in district court. That is where we're going to find the most pro se litigants, the people that aren't represented by attorneys, that don't have the money to have attorneys represent them, and that's the community that I want to serve. So to answer your question, yes, I'm dedicated to serving the 6 years.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your willingness.
Thank you.
Other questions, members? Okay, I think that that's all we have for you, Judge. Thank you so much for waiting for so long. I wasn't really expecting it to be quite that long, but there you go. Members, thank you all for being here and for participating actively. I appreciate that as the chair. And just a reminder that the Judiciary Committee will meet for decision-making on Monday, October 5 at 10:30 a.m. via Zoom and in room 016. A notice will be posted and broadcast information will be available on the legislator's website. And let me just be sure, Jesse, if you can hear me, tell me is that everything we need to do?
Yes, I believe that is everything.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. We'll see you on Monday. We are concluded. If I had a gavel, I would bang it now.